Entitled mom tried to walk off with my mom's Christmas gifts, injured me, and then claimed I stole her items. Here's what happened. Before the story begins, make sure to subscribe and hit that bell so you can listen to more stories. I was online shopping this morning when I saw these gorgeous outdoor Christmas lights at really great prices at a local store. My mother loves Christmas, but she's never had the money or time to put any lights up, but she longed to have some. I decided that, as an early Christmas present, that I would get her some that she could be proud of. I purchased some great deals online, like some light-up reindeer, her favorite, some colorful string lights with the colors red, green, white, blue, and purple, a snowflake-shaped light, and some light-up candy canes for her candy cane lane. I ordered them, paid with my credit card, and was actually able to pick them up in-store same day, all for less than $100, a total steal. When I get there, I see there's a long line at customer services, so I decided to browse for a bit. I ended up getting a super great deal on a pair of dripping icicle lights, the buy one get one free deal. I then added a strand of light-up garland so she could decorate inside with more than just the tree. I know it's a lot, but I made good money from doing remote lab work at my university. And since I had more than enough saved up for tuition, decided to spoil my family after such a rotten year. So I go, pay, and sure enough, the line at customer service is a lot shorter. I get in line, wait maybe 20 minutes, and when I'm at the counter, I presented my email proving proof of purchase, but it takes a bit for her to scan the QR code as the device is apparently not reading it. I got no problem with that because, hey, things happen. When suddenly, my own cart is slammed into my side. See, what I did was put myself between my cart and the exit. I've read one too many horror stories of people just running off with others' purchases, so I wanted to play it safe. And it kinda worked, except for the fact that I'm now in a lot of pain because my own cart was rammed right into my hip bone and knee, knocking me over to the floor and nearly making me whack my head. And the crazy lady who did that then tried to push my own cart over me, all while screaming, I kid you not, "You stupid little thief." This lady was literally trying to sell that I stole her cart. Needless to say, I'm super pissed and super in pain. Security is called, I'm screaming at the lady to stop lying and give me back my cart, and then I ended up detained. Why? Sadly, she was black and I was Caucasian, in a time of all this racism craziness. Now before you start on that whole, you racist nonsense, I'm not. I couldn't care less if that lady was an alien or had purple skin, or was the Queen of England herself. I treat others by how they treat me. And she was stealing my gifts from my mother and claiming I was the thief. Angry, I then twisted out the security guard's hold, ripped the receipt out of my pocket, and shoved it in his face. I had the receipt, you idiot. He's startled, steps back, and stares at the receipt, and I snap at him that he needs to get a pair of glasses because skin color or not, I had the receipt, that woman doesn't. Now call me a damn ambulance because I can't take the bus home from how in pain my body was from being ran by my own cart. An older security guard, a manager, and the head honcho supervisor come over, and the older guard started berating the younger guy for jumping to conclusions. The manager checks my receipt and, sure enough, it's all mine. And the crazy lady has no receipt. Of course, then the lady starts wailing about how I must have stolen her receipt, only to have it pointed out that I'd used my points card for that store, which was on the receipt, and they could match to my ID. They also had CCTV of me with all my items, buying them, and then her coming along and grabbing them and ramming me with my own cart. I then had to sit there on a bench with all my items. The customer service girl who struggled to get the QR code to scan returned my phone to me. I dropped it on the counter when I was hit, and started placing my items I had bought online into the cart, which now had been returned to me, while Crazy Lady was detained. Police and EMTs arrived not long after. Store actually wasn't that far from a hospital or police station, and after the EMTs loaded me onto the stretcher, my ankle was badly twisted from being knocked over, and I wanted to go to the hospital just to be safe. I gave my statement, pressed charges, before turning to the supervisor as he comes over. He's very apologetic and asks if I want anything from the store for free as compensation for this disaster. I told him that all I wanted was for A, the idiot security guard to either be rigorously retrained in thinking for once or be fired, B, that I wanted them to hold on to my purchases until I could come back to pick them up, and C, that crazy lady who is now screaming, "You'll hear from my son, he's a lawyer," be permabanned from the entire chain because who knows if she's gotten away with it before or would do it again. They super agreed that it was more than fair. The security guy who detained me improperly looked horrified and, apparently Crazy Lady heard that and went deathly pale, before she fainted right then and there. I'm now sitting in a hospital bed. My ankle is in a cast, the bones are cracked, my left hip and knee in pain, my right elbow bruised, and having to call my grandparents to pick me up because my family only has 2 cars and my sister and dad are both at work, hence why I took the bus. I'm so pissed it's not even funny. What happened to me isn't right no matter the skin color, and I'm going to be pressing charges. And I'm in Canada, so I can't make her pay my medical bill as it's covered by the provincial plan. I'm so sorry that happened to you. If you have the time for it, I think you should charge her with assault or theft, as like you said, what she did is not right at all. This was a terrible act of violence against you, but you did nothing wrong. The security guard couldn't have handled the situation any less professionally, as he didn't check for any evidence before jumping to conclusions against you. I'm glad you made the demand that he be fired or retrained, as it's ridiculous how badly he is doing his job. Wishing you a speedy recovery and hope you have a great Christmas. I'm sure your mother will love the gifts you got her. Grandma attempts to ruin our Christmas because I refused to fulfill never agreed upon requests that were literally impossible to fulfill. The story is about my paternal grandmother. Let's call her Mrs. Furrer. It takes place over the course of about 1 year in the blessed pre-COVID times. Before we get into it, however, let's give you some background on Miss Furrer and my relationship with her. Miss Furrer owns 2 houses next to the school I attended before leaving my hometown to study at university. My dad used to pay me to do some chores around her house, which she wasn't able to do herself due to some disabilities stemming from long-term alcoholism. I've heard stories about her borderline abusive behavior from different family members and know she was divorced 5 times. While working for her, I quickly realized how difficult she could be, but I always thought my family members were exaggerating. That was all until this story happened, so let's get into it. Back in the summer of 2018, I was visiting my parents in my hometown. I'd been living elsewhere for about 3 years at that point. I decided to visit Miss Furrer as I had a pretty good relationship with her back then. I was one of the few family members that was actively in contact with her for other than financial reasons, and she seemed excited about my visit as we hadn't seen each other in person for about a year. When I called her to set up the time and date, she asked me whether it was possible for me to borrow my mom's car. I don't own one myself. To help her pick up some furniture she wanted to add to a room for a live-in housekeeper. I cleared everything with my mom as I thought it wouldn't be too much trouble. The day came and she picked up so much furniture it barely fit into the car, but everything seemed fine. I carried the furniture into the designated room through 3 very narrow staircases. It was a very old house in Germany. Afterwards, she had some coffee and cake together before I left. I then dropped off my mom's car and headed out to party with some friends from school whom I hadn't seen in a while. The next day was when everything began. At around 9 a.m., I was still slightly hungover from a great party the night before. She called me demanding to know where I was since I apparently agreed to help her assemble the furniture we bought. This was never agreed upon. She also demanded that I would bring the car again as she had forgotten to pick up some things the day before. The car, however, wasn't even in town since my mom needed it that day and had already left. I tried to explain to her that the car wasn't available that day, that we hadn't agreed to me helping her out the next day, and that I was in no constitution to drive and build furniture even if I wanted to. I did offer to reschedule to another day that week, but she wouldn't have it. She couldn't accept that it was literally impossible for me to fulfill her request, and the debate got heated. I don't remember specifics, but she tried to guilt trip me, which is when I snapped and told her that I wasn't her flying monkey here to serve at her pleasure. She hung up after that, and I thought that would be that. Over the course of the week, I tried calling her several times since I still wanted to help, but wasn't able to reach her before I had to go back to my university town. Fast forward to Christmas 2008. I was back at my parents' place for the holidays, and the last interaction I had with Miss Furrer was the phone call I just described. On Christmas Eve, my dad told me that she would be joining us for dinner and that she wanted me to pick her up. Now, due to my dad's job, it was up in the air whether he would be able to join us that evening, so he added that Miss Furrer would only attend if he was also there. In case he wasn't, I wasn't supposed to pick up the presents from her place. As it turned out, Dad had to work that night, so I just went and picked up the bag of presents. This was an ordeal in itself. I drove to Miss Furrer's place, parked in front of it, rung the doorbell, and waited for her to open. This could usually take a while since her house is big and she isn't the fastest anymore due to the aforementioned disabilities. After a longer time than usual, I called her landline to inform her I was there. She picked up and told me she was still in the bathroom and would be right there. It took her about 10 minutes to get to the door, during which I was waiting in the snowy streets at -5 Celsius. When she came to the door, she handed me the bag of presents for my parents and brothers. She also asked me to wish everyone a happy Christmas and added that she hoped I would enjoy my present. I thanked her, said my goodbyes, and drove back to my parents' place to enjoy Christmas Eve. Evening had come. We had dinner with my mom, her mother, and my 2 younger brothers. We already had unwrapped most of the presents before dinner as we usually do. All in all, a very pleasant and typical Christmas Eve for my family. After dinner, we started drinking homemade mulled wine when I remembered I still had Miss Furrer's gifts and handed them out. Me and my brothers each received an envelope with a card in it, but suspiciously, mine differed in size and color. I opened it and read its contents. This is where the fun begins. While my brothers each received a complimenting message with 50 euros enclosed in the card, I received a scalding letter saying she was still devastated by my behavior the previous summer and that she was expecting an apology for the disrespectful way I had treated her. Remember, her demands were literally impossible to fulfill. I admit I snapped and said something that could have been taken as disrespect, but continued to reach out wanting to help her while I was in town. I didn't really know how to react. I was speechless and threw the card on the table before going to grab another mug of mulled wine. When I got back from the kitchen, the older of my two younger brothers had read the card and loudly exclaimed something akin to, "What the actual hell?" At that point, everyone had noticed something was wrong, and I read the card out loud. I then told them about what happened during summer. Nobody could really believe how insane Miss Furrer was, especially since she had been quietly planning her revenge for about half a year. The aforementioned brother, who had some extra money due to a paid internship, asked the youngest of us three whether he needed the €50 and offered to pay it himself, as he wanted to take all three cards and throw them into Miss Furrer's face. My youngest brother refused the monetary offer but loved the idea, so that's what they did. I don't really know what happened afterwards. All I know is that Miss Furrer was not expecting that reaction, as apparently no one in our family had ever stood up to her the way we did. This concludes the Christmas part of the story. We didn't really dwell on the topic for the rest of the holidays and still had an amazing celebration together. Fast forward to the summer of 2019. My parents had planned a big family reunion to celebrate a couple of important dates in their lives coinciding. That party was the first time I interacted with Miss Furrer since the Christmas incident. I acted as if nothing had happened, since I didn't want to cause a scene on my parents' special day with most of our extended family being there. This is a rare occasion since the family is spread around the Western world. We were together for about a week in my hometown, going to different dinner places every night, and had a great and memorable time. I even got along with Miss Furrer, albeit superficially and only in group settings. We never talked one-on-one. One evening, we were having dinner at a really nice place, and she came over to the table where me, my brothers, and my cousin sat. They all know what happened during the previous Christmas, and we were pretty angry with her. She asked whether I was willing to visit her one-on-one so we could have a talk about what happened. I was happy to, as I don't like to hold on to grudges, but asked her that we talk at eye level like adults with mutual respect, as she has a tendency to twist the truth to suit her needs. She agreed and asked me to call her to set up a time and date after the week-long celebration was over. A day later, I received an email from Miss Furrer stating that she no longer had any interest in a conversation, as it was apparent from my demands that I hadn't grown and wasn't ready to apologize. She also wrote that she wasn't able to speak to me on eye level, as she had much more life experience than me. Again, I didn't really know how to process this. I still don't, but enough time has passed that I have stopped caring about my relationship with her. Up to this day, nothing has really changed about the situation. I've seen her a couple times at different family gatherings since then, and the interactions were fine. Probably because neither of us wants to dig this back up during otherwise great family times, but the issue itself was never really resolved. I think the main problem here is that you haven't actually thought about what your end goal is. You don't want to apologize, but I'm guessing you do want to make up with this woman, as she is your grandmother, and it sounds like you previously had a nice relationship with her. I can only assume that she feels the same way about you, so why not just talk to her about it? I know that you never did anything wrong, but it is obvious that she's not willing to accept she's in the wrong. So if there was to be someone to put the relationship back in good terms, it would have to be you to instigate. A Karen almost got arrested and dragged off the plane. Before COVID, I was traveling regularly for my work, this time to Edinburgh. The flight was uneventful and we landed. But after touching the ground, we were asked to stay in our seats as there were some issues at the gate and they could not dock yet. About 10 minutes passed. I was sitting in the back of the plane, as I generally find those seats are taken last, more often than not leaving me with an empty space next to me. But this time, the plane was fully booked, so no luck. A woman in her 30s or 40s got up regardless and walked past me to the end of the plane into one of the toilets. I had a window seat and was looking at the gates about 1 mile from where we were parked, as I noticed the crew mounting stairs to the back door of the plane, and I was prepared for a bus trip to the gate or, worse, a long walk, thinking they were going to let us get off here instead of at the gates. But I was up for a surprise. Instead of a crew member climbing up the stairs, I saw 5 police officers. The stewardess opened the back door and 4 officers came in. 1 stayed just outside the door, 2 stayed in the back, and 2 of them walked to about 5 rows in front of me and arrested one of the passengers. No idea why, but he complied. His girlfriend or wife was not arrested but was getting up as well. This story is not about them, though this was my first time ever witnessing something like this happening in at least 50 flights a year. The story is about the woman who got into the toilet just before the police showed up. She probably had no idea what was happening and tried to leave the toilet, only to find that she got ordered back in by one of the officers. She started shouting that she wanted to get out, but the officer was firm and told her to stay inside. He did not give a reason, but from his tone, it was clear he was not taking any of her BS. While the man and woman were gathering their stuff, the woman in the toilet starts screaming, ordering to let her out. Again, the officer told her to shut up and that what was happening was in no way related to her, telling her this would only take a few minutes and she could leave the toilet after they were gone. She was having none of it. She was screaming even louder, at the top of her lungs, making demands, trying to open the door that the officers closed again, cursing and calling him names, ordering the officer to let her out and back to her family. This went on for several minutes. When the man who was arrested was led to the back of the plane, the officer at the toilet plainly told the woman that she continued, she would be arrested and taken off the plane as well. That finally shut her up. I felt for the guy and admired his patience. I would not have taken her BS for the time he did. 2 minutes later, the police left with the arrested man and his girlfriend and finally allowed the woman to leave the toilet. Everybody was looking in her direction as she quietly got back to her seat. We arrived 30 minutes late, but I did not mind. The entertainment on this flight was awesome. Damn, what a crazy story. Definitely something to save for the grandkids one day. I admire how patient the officers were with the woman who sounds like the biggest headache possible. Why couldn't she just wait for the officers to do their job, and then she could have left the toilet without causing such a massive scene? Maybe she was anxious about the police finding something on her, or she just likes the attention. I wish we knew why that man was arrested, but the main thing is that the officers managed to do their job without too much of a hassle. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.